I am Titan Uranus, and you're watching In Time Independent News.
Hello everyone, welcome to In Time. With me as always is Commander McMillan. Lance, how are you?
Doing great.
Good to, and I see some have come from the shills. I don't know if they're done yet or not, but that music was for Dick. Let him know we played that long intro. He'll be delighted. Oh dear God. It's been a bit of a day. We've had a number of shows. We've had a lot of people showing up and commenting, and just a lot of things to say, a lot of things to talk about. So thank you guys. I wanted to talk. There's a couple of logistical things that I'm going to want to go over with you, Lance, because you've got so much experience with the logistics of getting ready for an invasion. And at the alligator. Alcatraz, I think it was the governor of Florida said that they are used to, one of the reasons they could build the camp so quickly was because they were used to recovering from hurricanes and repelling invasions, I think they said. And it's like, and we're being invaded. And so that's when I was just like, I don't, okay. All right.
Mariel boat lift, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the whole point, and then Donnie was going by, and he just said, we have a whole lot of cops. We call them alligators. You don't have to pay them much. Like, thank you, Donnie. Wow. Oh, dear
Cruelty
Lord.
is the purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, and they had said that, and that came out. Somebody had pointed out that people will now really think twice before coming to the U.S. and it's sort of like, yeah, that's obviously a huge part of it is the deterrence factor of how poorly we treat them. We have footage of the center overflowing, just flooding out, and about 2 feet of water coming in. This is right where all the hurricanes hit. I mean, this is either brilliantly thought out or terribly thought out, depending on what credit you wish to give the administration. But I got thinking about something, which is that like years ago, I had known, especially whenever you start in on social media, you invariably land in toxic communities. It happens in real life, but in social media, there seem to be more of them. And I got a buddy of mine who said, oh, that person's really toxic. I said, yeah, that's a toxic person. I'm going to stay away from them. I said, yeah, that person's really toxic too. I was like, yeah, that's I'm going to stay away from them. My buddy was like, oh, no. That's a bad idea. Wrong idea. Goes and puts the two of them together. He's like, hey, have you met this guy? Have you met this? I just thought you guys might be friends. And, I'm sitting there going, what the fuck are you doing? They're going to amplify. And they did. They got together and started being really super toxic to other people. And then after a reasonably short period of this, it wasn't long, the entire thing began to implode. And all the toxic people that they were collecting all started stabbing each other in the back and going crazy. And then before you knew it, it just, boom, gone. And my buddy was just like, done. I was just like, okay, I maybe that was just a one-off, but no, I've seen it now done time and time again where you get all the toxic people in a room and they reach this critical mass and it starts to implode. And I've been curious if that's going to happen, if and when that's going to happen in this administration. And
we're seeing it right now, with the feuding between Trump and Elon, and Elon saying, I have enough money, I can pay to primary every one of your supporters and get you out and replaced with people that support me.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. Yeah, who knew that when you get a bunch of psychopathic egomaniacs together, that actually get, you know, there's not only enough room for one megalomaniac.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I wanted to look at, we've seen a tremendous amount of damage done. We've all watched it. We've talked about it. But the interesting thing is, holding a regime like this together is not easy to do. We sort of think it's easy because they make it look easy, but in the reality, there is a lot of backstabbing. We know that Elon Musk's departure was far more contentious than you know. At one point, it may have come to blows with Marco Rubio and all of this other stuff. So, you know, Trump's trying to hold this together, and in some cases, it's holding together very well, and in other cases, I'm kind of curious. So, the question, I read an AP article that said that Musk would have to be an idiot to go against Trump, and it's not because Trump is invulnerable or anything like that. Musk has so much money, he may really be able to do something, but there's a poor history in this country of rich people getting involved in politics and having any significant success. That's not a common thing. And in some ways, Musk has more to lose than Trump, because he really could become poor if things go, and he could get deported. I mean, there's a lot of things. But having said that, Musk hasn't done anything that anyone expected him to, and doesn't really seem to care about consequences. So he's made his opinion crystal clear. What do you think he's going to do?
I think he's trying to force his way back into, if not the good graces, at least the position where he exercises some power, like he had as the, what was that organization called?
Doge.
Thank you. And it's probable that that's what he's looking for. I think he got bored with what was going on. He also got a little upset with the fact that he wasn't being appreciated like he thought it should be. I mean, let's face it, he and Trump are both malignant narcissists, and all they want is approbation from the mob. So I think he got upset when people were saying, hey, we don't like what you're doing. And, you know, it was a case of the little boy taking his toys and going home because people didn't want to play with the rules he brought. Yeah, that's part of it. I think he's too influential for Trump to ignore him. So Trump will probably figure out that bringing him back in a limited capacity where he can be sort of controlled, or at least what Trump thinks is control, is probably the preferred course of action there. But who knows? You know, and trying to predict what Trump is going to do is like, you know, predicting whether, you know, it's going to rain tomorrow or today or the next 100 days. There's no way to figure it out that far in advance.
So, I've noticed, I mean, they don't seem to have any qualms, and Marjorie Taylor Greene among them, especially among them, about looking silly in public, or having these feuds in public, or threatening each other in public. I mean, Donald Trump literally said, somebody asked him, would you deport Elon Musk? And even, honestly, even if the answer was yes, the answer should have been no. You know, it's like he just said, no, of course not, the next question, and move on. And instead he's like, well, we're going to have to look into that. And you're like, what? You're threatening just because you're pissed at him. Nothing. And then he says too, he's just like, well, you know, he's got all these subsidies, and we're going to have to look into whether there's any shady shenanigans. I'm saying they're going, first of all, you vouched for him when people asked if there are any shady shenanigans. Second of all, if there are any, and if you knew about them when you hired him. So you're essentially admitting, and it's either nobody sees this, nobody cares, and it's very weird that all of this is just out there for display, and they don't see. Does that mean anything to you?
I mean, I think it extends beyond just the two of them. I mean, you look at how quickly Hegseth bristles when somebody calls him on something. They're all the same ilk. They're all that malignant narcissist personality type. They thrive on trying to make others fear them because they know they can't be loved. So that's the proper way of doing business. And there's a long history of this kind of internecine warfare going on behind the scenes in many authoritarian regimes. The Nazi hierarchy were famous for how much they loathed one another and how they were constantly maneuvering to put somebody else down and put themselves at the top of the heap. You saw the same thing in the Kremlin, the constant bickering among people in the Central Committee because everybody wanted to be in the more lucrative positions where you could skim more money off for yourself. It's no different here. I think everybody's trying to play that game of how can I make this office benefit me the most, and is his office making him more money than mine is for me, then I should have him thrown out so I can move up to that slot.
There are a lot of open windows in Russia.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's the same thing here. It's just probably less overtly violent.
Well, give it time, but it makes sense, and that's I guess that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about. And I think you hit the nail on the head because I wanted to talk about the threats because these are public threats where they're saying, I'm going to deport Elon Musk just because I'm not just because he's saying things about me, and then Musk goes on Twitter and says, "Well, I have things I could reveal, but I won't. I'm just going to say Epstein," and it's sort of like. Where I come from, you can't just drop that in a tweet and walk away. But apparently, wow. And our allies must be confused as oh my, and it's the same thing with our allies. I hope Canada realizes that they need to sign this bill, and they need to reduce.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
the idiotic announcement of the ceasefire between Israel and Iran without talking to either of them, just blithely announcing it. That's the way these people's minds work, is they are convinced that the rest of the world believes them to be the smartest man in the room. Collectively, across the spectrum of the cabinet, we're all the smartest men in the room. And conversely, everybody on the outside looking in going, how in the world did they assemble such a collection of absolute morons?
Well, wasn't that one of the reasons why people said that they thought that Hitler would be great in power, was because he was the kind of guy you could have a beer with, and he was smart enough to run a country, but not so smart that he could really pull the wool over anyone's eyes, so he was a safe bet. And if I recall, that was actually one of the things that people had sort of said was attractive about him, was that people thought at least that he was sort of mediocre. There is, I want to just... a little sort of behind the scenes. Trump tweeted that peace has been reached in the Middle East, and we're like, okay, we're about to go live with it, but we're like, wait a minute, it's Trump, so I got to ask, is he just saying this, or has anyone told Israel and Iran that there's peace? And we're all talking to each other, and like, we actually probably should ask. And we we check with Iran, and Iran's like, look, we didn't start this war, so if you guys want to have peace, that's great for us, but nobody told us anything, and Israel's just like...
The flip side is the admission, with no sense that there was anything wrong with it, that they coordinated both their strike on Iran and Iran's strike on our bases in advance.
Yeah.
We'll tell you that we're going to attack so you can evacuate people so nobody will be hurt. You do the same for us when you shoot at our base. It's okay. We understand you need to do it. I mean,
it turns the entire U.S. military and governmental structure into kabuki theater.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's and we're going to apparently spend more money on this kabuki theater by upping the budget of. Oh my God! Let me quickly dunk on you $20. When there are representatives like Luna quoting Russian propaganda today verbatim, the government is indeed toxic. 𝐒𝐸𝐿𝐴 Ukrainian, Slava. Yeah, the well, and Trump alternates between really just the Russian talking points. Ukraine kind of had it coming. It's juicy rare earth metals. You can't wear rare earth metals in neighborhoods like this at night and not expect to get invaded.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
They live in a world where might makes right.
Yeah. And I think
if you examine his business dealings since he started his climb, that's exactly how it works. He basically forces people to accept the fact that they're going to get a raw deal, that he isn't going to pay them, all of that, and he sees nothing wrong with that. I could get away with it because I'm powerful.
And that's why he drops the bomb on everybody in the middle of the room as his opening gambit. It's always something really bizarre, really weird, and everyone's like, wait a minute, this is going to screw everybody, so that by the time you're done, when it's a deal that screws everybody 75% of what his original was, you walk away saying, oh, wow, hey, thank God. But he opens every negotiation by saying, some people say that maybe, Iran just shouldn't exist anymore. And this is me being even-handed and all this. And he comes up with the worst and just, it's an interesting tactic. It took me a while to spot it, but whenever he starts a negotiation, his opening tactic, and it's also, I think, to make sure that he's let everybody know that, like, he's in charge. So he just says something absolutely preposterous, bold, that nobody could possibly support. Says, well, because I'm a nice guy, I'll walk it back a little bit. But now everybody has to, he's almost the lion tamer with the whip, and Duncan, you also gifted 5 memberships. Thank you for that. Linda S. Gifted 5 memberships. Thank you, Linda, for that gift. Sinister Porpoise, $5.12. Maybe I'm just going to start reading out in, just reading out in bits and bytes, like how many. I don't know if I want to, but that's Secretary Brainworm has done a great job of leadership by example. I now know how to properly take care of my internal parasites, swim in sewage.
There you go.
Well, unfortunately, that parasite died, and I think that parasite was the smartest part of him.
Yeah.
My understanding was he was pretty, well-spoken in his younger days. So clearly, the parasite he got the parasite early, and he was puppeted.
Yeah, and to me, it's still mind-boggling that in Congress they're so scared of the guy.
Yeah,
when the big beautiful bill came up, there were a large number of Republicans who were looking at this saying, I can't do this. I'll be voted out of existence by my constituents if I make Medicare go away. All the retired people are going to go into rebellion. And I don't know what he does, but he somehow got them to all toe the line.
It is a cult of personality. I don't get it.
I think that's part of it, but I don't think that's the whole story.
Okay.
I think, because you got to go back and remember, he said during the election, if I get voted in, you will never have to vote again.
Yeah.
I think that's the way he's buying these guys off who are saying, I'll be voted out, primaried by my constituents. He's basically telling them, no, you won't. There isn't going to be an election in 24, or excuse me, in 26. We're just not going to have one.
Jesus.
And I can thoroughly see him trying to do that. I don't think he'd succeed. I think even the Supreme Court, with its obvious pro-MAGA bias, even they would balk at such a thing. But again, it's a case of Andrew Jackson saying, yeah, you've made your ruling. Let's see you enforce it.
Yep. Well, and as much as it's a weird position to be in, because Trump will say something absolutely crazy, and by this point we're all sort of used to it, but you have to sit there and look at it and say, okay, how many times have we dismissed him and said he will not be able to accomplish what he's saying he's going to do in a democratic, and boom, there it is. And again, I really would like to find a better analogy. I've been using, not Ceausescu, what's his name? I'll think of him in a minute, but to Mein Kampf, Hitler didn't say he was going to gas them, but he did say they had to be removed from the gene pool by at least some means, and he mentioned that he had heard gas could do it. So I mean, he was reasonably clear with what his intentions were, and people were like, "Nah, that's just because he wrote it down." It's like, do you know how much stuff I write down and just forget about?
Yeah, that's part of it. I also think that initially they started out not thinking they would have to do this, the final solution, that they threatened to do something horrific and the Western democracies would cave in and give him Madagascar to resettle all of European Jews there or something. Remember, that was one of his.
That's right. That was his.
And everybody kind of looked at him and said, "Are you freaking nuts?" And so, he went through the motions of, oh, okay, well, we'll let this passenger liner full of German Jews leave, and they can take refuge in any country that's willing to accept them, and nobody would take them. Well, proof positive, nobody cares about the Jews. I can go ahead and murder them now.
Yep. That is something that I forget often, which is whether it was deliberate or not. He had written in Mein Kampf and did make at least a cursory effort to get them relocated. He's like, they can live somewhere else, just not here. And if we can't relocate them, well, then we have a problem that needs to,
be dealt with. Yeah.
Yeah. So, speaking of, we've got these deportations, and what was it that you had told me about the ICE budget right before we started?
In the big, beautiful bill, ICE's budget is 3 times that of the budget of the Marine Corps.
Jesus.
So, unless ICE is planning on spending it all on comfy new office chairs or something, expect to see your local ICE with their own fighter jets providing air support, and they'll become the new Revolutionary Guard of America, basically.
That's an interesting. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Holy shit! I mean, I think that's a really good. I hadn't put it together that, but I think you're right.
A large number of the January 6ers who were freed are now in ICE. We know that ICE has for a long time been infiltrated by clean skin white supremacists. Clean skin meaning they don't have tattoos or obvious other marks that denote them as being white supremacists. Yep. And yeah, if you're planning on pulling a kind of a coup, that's a good way to start.
Well, and the alligator Alcatraz has an air base or an airfield. They're now sending Marines And I forget the name of the Marines, but I mentioned you in our last show because I remember you had talked to me about how you practiced rapidly building like a port. So if in Kuwait, Halliburton wasn't going to get contracts and we were actually going to use the people that we trained to do it, what you would do is you would go in and you would set up, and it's very important because Kuwait is too small to be able to refuel the ships that would have to be refueled for such an operation. So do it well, do it fast, and so we now have a marine equivalent of this that sets up airfields and repairs, maintains, and can run an airfield that is heading to Florida. What I found interesting was this came from Northern Command, which I reminded people now covers Greenland.
Yes.
Which is not a joke. And Northern Command sent the unit there, but did not say where in Florida. And there's actually two bases. There's one that's the Alligator one, and then there's another one that's 12 miles southwest of Jackson, in territory that's roughly as bad as the first one and has the roughly the same goals. That one does not have an airfield, and I don't know much about that. I only learned about that one several hours ago. There's at least a second base now. Now, the base is, the orders from CENTCOM gave complete authority to tell these Marines what to do to ICE, and said they're going to be operating under ICE authority. They're going to be at ICE's direction, but they will not be doing the following. And they mentioned all of these things. But I'm saying they're going, ICE is literally law enforcement. So you can't hand them to law enforcement and say they won't be doing any law enforcement, but they'll be doing whatever ICE tells them to do. I mean, yeah, it's great that they're not going to be transporting prisoners, but that's not all that law enforcement is. And if you're building an airport for law enforcement, holy smoke. So
it suggests that either they anticipate flying in a lot of potential deportees, which doesn't really make economic sense because you can easily put them in buses or whatever, or they're planning on flying out a lot of potential deportees using contract air flights, which nobody gets to see what they're doing, where they're going, what cargoes they're carrying. So you can make people disappear that you don't like.
That's the scariest thing. So when you add all of this up, we know that the Justice Department has now fast-tracked cases and is on a until further notice, fast-track any cases involving stripping somebody of their citizenship. So that is now part of the priorities of the Justice Department, is to fast track any case stripping anyone of their citizenship. Second one is immigration cases. So third would be cannibals, murderers, rapists, and so on and so forth. So those are our priorities going forward. But there's such a loose interpretation of so many rules here. I mean, it seems to me that he could strip anybody of their citizenship if he wanted to, and even if he can't, if he sends them to the Alligator Alcatraz, they never get heard from again. And we saw how hard it was to get back Garcia, and that was they've learned from that. They've learned how to make it even harder to throw somebody in the hole and throw away the hole.
It's gotten to be common practice that if you arrest somebody in Arizona for being undocumented and you're going to deport them, that you, within 24 hours, you move them out of Arizona to some other location where they don't have the support structure to, have a lawyer show up and deal with things, call a congressional rep and interfere, whatever. And the whole purpose is to just be able to do what they want without getting any interference from the system.
The fact that Garcia was found at all was luck, was absolute luck. A buddy of his was watching the deportations, recognized the tattoo on his arm, called his wife and said, I think he's one of the people that they sent. She looked at the same footage, said, yeah, that's him. If that guy had been anywhere else that night, we'd have no idea about Garcia.
Yeah.
And I love that they're like, I don't know why people are so focused on Garcia, because he's just the one that we caught. The question is, for everyone that we caught, there's going to be 20 that we don't. And there still are people missing. I don't know if the computer science, the Chinese computer science guy is still missing, but holy smoke. Adopted people had better have their record. I know it's the burden of proof is shifting to guilty until, just guilty.
But it goes even further than that. It's now, there's the case of, I think it was a German tourist who was trying to come in on a valid tourist visa, and the immigration service demanded that he open his cell phone up and let them scan his social media. And when they found things that were critical of Trump, they wouldn't let him in the country. How much time does it take to extend that mindset to doing it here, of just randomly stopping people on the street and saying, let me see your phone. Oh, you said something critical of the great Orange God King. You're gone. And where are we going to send you? Well, Supreme Court has said you can send them anywhere. So off you go to Central African Republic.
Yep. It's kind of a scary, vicious mob mentality. And so we actually have the photo. So this was what was on his social media. It was baby Vance. He had, I assume, others, but this was the image that went around in Sweden. What was it? Irish. Okay, so I think this is the case you were talking about. It's actually, I think he was from Norway, but let me play this quickly, because this is worth getting into real quick. So let me just see here. And is the audio? Oh, it's
of
not
Irish Parliament. We're watching a major incursion on freedom of expression, unthinkable in a Western democracy. This week, a young Norwegian tourist detained by ICE at Newark Airport and sent back to Oslo. Why? He had this meme on his phone, Minister. A meme depicting Vice President J.D. Vance as a baby. I mean, extraordinary. Extraordinary. That a young person with this amusing meme on their phone depicting a public person, that this would be used as an excuse to detain him for 5 hours and then deport him back to Oslo.
All right, so, so what I want to make clear, just so that everybody knows, is that they were upset about this picture right here. This is the picture that J.D. Vance wants nobody to see, and that nobody can have on their phone. So please let all of your friends know, send them a copy of this picture. Make sure you don't do it by your phone. And let them know that this picture is unacceptable to J.D. Vance, and nobody should see it, and nobody should, it's obviously a terrible picture. I'm going to put it down in just a second, because I don't want anyone else to push this picture along, or this one. This is the nice moving action one with the creepy eyes. I think folks, just obviously these memes are hurtful. They're disrespectful. Nobody should play them. That, and the other one, of course, is Goth Vance.
I had not seen that one before.
Boy band goth. Well, there's a reason you haven't seen it, Lance, and I think that we need to make sure nobody else sees it. So send this to as many of your friends as possible and tell them, don't show this to anyone.
Share this.
Yes. So, and we do have links to each of those in the Discord. That's not a joke. There's a link to every one of those pictures. If you like any of them and would like to warn your friends of exactly what they should not be sending, you can find that on our Discord, because we're that kind of news program. So, yeah, the other scary thing, and I haven't found anything that the first part of this I'd known for about 2 weeks. The second part I learned a couple days ago, or just as they were passing it, that scared the living daylights out of me. The first part sounds good. A little self-serving, but sounds good. They raised the debt limit to $45 trillion. Now, the advantage to that
is the party of fiscal responsibility.
Yeah. Well, I agree with, because the debt limit isn't the problem. The problem is the budget. But the debt limit is how we pay off the bills that we've already incurred. So when we start to have fights over that, our credit rating, international credit rating goes down. We have all sorts of, it's a nightmare. Nobody should ever hold the debt limit hostage. And it's one of those things that, and Mitch McConnell admitted, it's not a hostage worth shooting. Never shoot the hostage, but it is a hostage worth taking. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, that's you're literally saying you're playing chicken with the entire economy of the U.S. The debt limit should never be screwed with, and has always been raised up until the modern era, where Republicans have been taking it hostage, knowing that if the Democrats don't cave in, the entire economy goes south. So by raising it 10 million, that takes it off the table for some time. So at first I was actually glad about that. I would have been better just saying, look, we automatically raise the debt limit and make it as par for, which is what we've been doing for the last 100 years anyway. It's just part of the course. The Congress just raises it when they need to raise it. But okay, 10 million raise. I was just like, somebody was thinking and put that in, and at least there isn't going to be a fight about the debt limit and nobody can hold it hostage. Then, as we were reading one of the final drafts of this thing, I read the appropriation for any agency that is involved in border patrol and immigration. Do you want to know what they have been appropriated? They have been appropriated any funds that are not spent or accounted for in the budget up to the debt limit. That means that essentially their budget is $10 billion because the debt ceiling has been raised to $10 billion. So, and I'm sitting there going, this can't be right. And I've read it multiple times. I haven't seen anybody reporting on it. I've seen nobody refute it. Yeah, it's a blank check. What they've said is any amount between what is in the budget and what the debt ceiling is, they can spend. The debt ceiling is now about 10 trillion, because we were pretty close to the debt. We were going to have a debt ceiling vote anyway. We were pretty close to the debt ceiling. They just upped it by 10 trillion and said immigration and border security can take any amount between what's in the coffers and the debt ceiling that they want at any time. I think it was authorized through 2035. So, wow. The irony is, and this is the funny thing. Well, I don't know if funny is the right word, but I guess what they're doing for the building of the alligator Alcatraz, I'm saying they're going, okay, now they send down the Marines down there, and the Marines could have 10 trillion to draw from. Everybody involved in this has the wall now has 10 trillion to draw from, except the wall, I think, is apportioned anyway separately, but they can draw from this 10 trillion. It's insane. So, but instead, what they're doing right now, at least for the two camps that they are building in Florida, is that Florida is paying for them to be reimbursed by FEMA, of all things. Which, yeah, I have no idea. I think, and I think that that's also why they're using the resources for like post-hurricane resources in Florida, so that they can have FEMA, restored. Although I think FEMA is part of Homeland Security. I don't. Who the hell knows how that works at this point anymore? But I'm sitting there going like, Trump doesn't pay his bills, and he's, there's a number of states that he's worked with so far that haven't gotten paid back, and a couple of red states that had either, I think whether it was hurricanes or whatnot, during this recent presidency that we've been too busy covering every other disaster to get into, and he's just like, no, we're not sending you disaster relief. He's not sending disaster relief. He's not going to pay really for these things, I don't think. So, the governor of Florida, what's his name? I wanted to say Huckabee, but it's not Huckabee. It's
DeSantis?
DeSantis, that's it. Thank you. Governor of Florida apparently called up Department of Homeland Security and kept saying, how can I help? How can I help? And he's like, well, give us this land. Let us do this. Let us do. And then the Department of Homeland Security is like, yeah, if only every governor could be that way. We're going to look to see what Louisiana, Texas, and other states, presumably California, do in terms of being so helpful. But the reality is, again, unless I'm reading it wrong, reading this stuff is a little difficult. It doesn't have to be, but a lot of times it is. It's often written in legalese. And
it's done that way so that the average person can't get a clear picture of the corruption that's going on.
And I've come to understand that more and more through the life of this show, is that, yeah, it's a way to weed out the people who can speak. It's Latin. It's Latin. Galileo was not imprisoned for saying that that we revolved around the sun. That's not what he was in prison for. He was in prison for saying it in the Vulgate. He was in prison for not saying it in Latin. He said it in Latin, but he also said it in, I forget what the other language was. Probably would have been Italian, I suppose. And that's what he got in trouble for. They're like, no, nobody else can know these things. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's why in most of the red states, they're very aggressively purging school libraries of anything that does not tell their story.
Yep.
Slavery was good for the blacks. It was the right thing to do because they were so simple they couldn't help themselves. And the Trail of Tears, that was appropriate because the Indians were not using the land to its fullest capabilities, and they should be moved somewhere else so that white farmers can use the land to its full potential and help the national budget.
It never, I remember learning about Martin Luther King Jr., civil rights and all, it never crossed my, now I grew up in Massachusetts, so I'm north of the Mason-Dixon line anyway, but it never crossed my mind that we would legitimately have to fight against people making those arguments for slavery ever again. And I've seen, they're on Twitter, and legitimate, this isn't people trolling, this is people saying, look, I'm not saying slavery was a good thing, but in the end, it gave them, solid work, a job, a sense of response, and, look at what it did for this country. And in the end, you should allow people to be indentured. If they get into too much debt, turn them into a slave, and it helps everybody. Isn't this what? Now, again, not that I'm for slavery, but, and I'm just sitting there going like, oh my God, and that's the light stuff. That's the. Oh,
and that's where they want this to head. They're trying to institute what amounts to a feudal system. The billionaires are all the dukes and counts of their own territories. And we all pay homage to the king. And then they delegate their, lesser fiefs down to other gentry. And the rest of us, who cares?
And I think that's the thing, right? There really is a list. Let's see. What's his name? Virgin Atlantic. Brannon.
I don't know.
Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Trump. What's his name? Former Governor Mitt Romney. Take a look at all of the people that have, through one way or another, Richard Branson, that was it, thank you, have amassed a huge amount of wealth. And what I find really fascinating, and this is almost universally across the board, the ones who want more social programs and who are more against capitalism and for socialism and the sense that these people are thinking of, are the ones who actually earned their money. the ones who worked for it, the ones who earned it on the stock market with a lot of hard work. I mean, talk about inspirational Warren Buffett's story of how his daddy didn't loan him $1 million so that he could go out and get a $21 billion loan from Deutsche Bank backed by the Bank of Moscow. He earned his money with a lot of hard work, and he's cautious with it.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
I have old-fashioned views when it comes to the Bank of Moscow. Sorry. Especially when it comes to the emoluments and Alien Enemies Act, the Foreign Agents Act, the Espionage Act, and a number of other acts in the United States, and the sitting president. But, again, old-fashioned. And so you take a look at the true innovators and the people who have earned their money. In most cases, the vast majority, they believe in helping people. And, you get the Bill Gates, who made the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the pledge where I think they said that they only like a tiny, tiny percentage of their fortune can go to the kids, just enough that they can go to college or whatever, like $100,000 or something like that. And then the rest gets given away when they die. Period. End of discussion. And you don't see the people who inherited their wealth, which includes Mitt Romney. He likes to say he didn't, but it was his wealth that paid for his private education and his father's contacts that got him into what would eventually become Bain Capital. So it's not like he was, he got more than a few hands up. And Trump, who's because I have money, not because I earned it, not because I'm smart, not because I'm a good person, but because I have money, I should be allowed to do whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen that in the microcosm locally where I live. So we're not talking billionaire class, we're talking lower millionaire type class. But the father founded a company and made a lot of money, and they own beach homes on multiple beach homes for each kid, plus the parents had theirs, along the waterfront, kind of flanking both sides of where my parents live. And the father, who had founded the business, every year, even though they didn't live at the beach house, but he'd be there on the 4th of July. So every 4th of July, he'd donate $10,000 to the fire department, the local fire department, and another $10,000 was given to them so they could put on a community fireworks show on the 4th of July. That went on until the father passed. And then the sons, who inherited the money, immediately stopped doing anything to support the local community. Because they didn't do anything to get this money. Why should they have it? And I think that's kind of, I won't say universal, but I think it's quite common that those who inherit have this inflated view of their own self-importance and self-worth, that they're better than other people, and they look down on other people who don't have as much as they do, even though they didn't do anything to get it. Yet they will all tell you they worked so hard to keep their money. Yeah. Going to the country club and hobnobbing with other assholes.
It's like it's projection. They somewhere inside they know that it was just the genetic lottery, but they don't want anyone to mention it or bring it up or talk about it. So instead, go on the attack and say, "I'm better than you." Period. End of discussion. Titan sent me this, and we can't. We haven't verified it. My suspicion is the numbers are reasonably close to accurate. If they're not, sorry, I suspect they are. It looks like a reasonably reliable source. It's not a huge thing, but it's worth getting into here. So, immigration enforcement will now have a budget larger than all but two of the world's militaries. This will be as soon as Trump signs the bill. So when Trump signs the bill, the top country spending anything, I guess, would be the USA, with $895 billion spending on military. Second would be China with $227 billion on military. Third would be the U.S. Immigration Enforcement Department with $170 billion on military spending. Wow.
Yep.
That exceeds Russia, India, Saudi Arabia, UK, and Japan.
And France and lots of other countries. Yeah.
Thank you, Titan.
It just shows you how wacko things are getting here.
Well, and I think what scares me the most, and I don't think about it very often because there's too many practical things, and this is a much more sort of philosophical thing, but what scares me the most is it's the demonization of the people. These are human beings. In some cases, they're idiots. In some cases, they're geniuses. It is every walk of, there is, I make this argument when we talk about, if you really want to talk about making the world a better place, lift up the poor. And the reason why is very simple. Statistically speaking, at some point in human history, recent human history, there was a little black girl born in Africa somewhere who starved to death, who was smarter than Albert Einstein. How do I know? It's just statistics. But because she starved to death, because we don't give a fuck about them, so we don't have the benefit of that. We don't have the benefit of the surgeons, the researchers, any of it. So it's in the same way that, the continuing emancipation of women, both in the U.S. and hopefully across the world, benefits everybody, because you've got more qualified people who can do the jobs that need to be done when you're drawing from the entire population, not just half of it. And so, but the power to be gained, and it's this one, you've mentioned this one before, I love this one, the power to be gained by doing this is amazing. And the ability to manipulate, and this is what we're seeing. And again, Germany, that was what made Hitler successful, was to find a group of people that he could sit there and say, they are responsible for everything that you do not have. Not let's talk about the successes we have, so on and so forth, but everything that we don't have, it's them. And hating them became very easy. And the speed at which that is happening in this country, and the demonization, and that's also why everyone was just like, when he said they're not sending us their best and the brightest and they're dirty people and all these other things, not to take it seriously. It's like, no, I take it very seriously, because the problem is, if he gets into power, that attitude, that toxicity, to bring it back, is going to, and he has empowered. When somebody at one of his rallies was talking about lighting a black man on fire, and he heard about it, and he's like, yeah, well, the guy was disrupting my rally. That's what's going to happen. And it's just sort of like, so it's spreading. The people around him. I had said this in my rant. I should probably do a link to my rant. If Titan has a link to it and can drop it on my channel, I have a rant about Trump that comes from the primaries, from his first run, right after he had said we should we should murder the families of terrorists. But all that notwithstanding, I think it's intoxicating, this attitude that, like, well, now I'm superior to somebody else, and Trump is making it permissible. He's making it permissible to talk about lighting people on fire, because there's no consequences for that kind of action anymore. And that's toxic, and that's really, holy smoke. And so and
we know that it's working in the way he's intending, because look at the number of incidents that have happened over the past decade or so, since he started getting into politics, of extremist right-wingers shooting things up, bombing things, what have you. you don't see people on the left doing that. It's all these white supremacist Christo-fascist types that think that, yeah, I'm superior to them, so it's okay if I do it.
Yep. I'm curious. I'm curious if I should actually just play the rant in case anybody wants to hear it. We could let you go, and I could end with that. I may end up doing that, or I may just drop the link to the rant if I can get get the rant into this system. Maybe I'll play it for people who want to hear it. So yeah, let me ow, excuse me. So yeah, it's really sad to see, and it's sad to see the level of, and I think we're going to see crime go up. We're going to see crime go up because more people are going to feel entitled to go. So it's just like, it's that attitude that causes crime.
It's not just that, it's that as more people get put out of work because of, DOJ shutting down the government agency that they work for, or tariffs destroying the business that they work for, or what have you. As that happens, people are going to be getting more and more desperate, particularly since we're removing also all of the social safety nets that were in place to help people that had those kind of situations befall them. And now it's like, oh no, we don't care if you've crashed and burned. So you're in a position where you're forced to steal to survive in some ways.
Yep. It's very short-sighted thinking on the. It's self-aggrandizing. I have to believe it's emotionally, you like it, but all right. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm not. Oh yes, please.
I was going to say, and I think, I said earlier, but I think it bears repeating. The cruelty is a fundamental aspect of this regime, because it enables all that follows behind it. And it makes that 1/3 of the population who think he's, sent by God as a savior for the country, it gives them both moral and, to some extent, protection to do things like has been happening. And yeah, it's crazy.
Yep. Well, and that's what I thought a discussion on that, on the toxicity and the brutality of that culture. In fact, I wanted to, before we go, I do want to do one more thing. I want to look up 1984. So, you and I have talked about our favorite books before, and
Orwell was only off by 40 years.
Yeah, Orwell. It's a book that I think people, read, and you can sit there and marvel at the imagination. Only it didn't take him a whole heck of a lot of imagination, because he was modeling it after what Stalin did. It wasn't that hard, but in it was a line that you reminded me of. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. And I think that's what Trump sees.
Yep.
I think that's what Trump wants to. That's definitely what J.D. Vance wants to reduce, and I think that's what a large majority of them want to reduce humanity to. This person being stamped out by a boot. All right. Well, any final thoughts before we go?
Not really. My usual admonishment to your listeners of, please correspond with your elected officials and let them know how you feel while you still can.
Yeah.
Try to influence things by making your voice heard, because if things continue down the path they're proceeding, we're royally screwed. I mean, let's be honest here. We're not even 6 months into this second administration, and look at what has happened already and then project that out for another 3.5 years and just imagine how horrific life in this country is going to be.
It feels like 2 years. It feels like he's maybe hit halfway through his term. It feels like, maybe he's at the halfway point. I mean, that's what it feels. I mean, but when you said that, like, oh my God. Oh my God. We've got $2 Sinister Porpoise, 1984 didn't get us here. Fahrenheit 451 did. A lot of, I think that's 1984 is where we are. 451 is how we got here. Dave N 199, great stream. Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone who donated. This is
and arguably Heinlein's Starship Troopers isn't too far behind.
Oh God. We should have a talk just about that on a Downtime. I know some of it just because I had a brother-in-law who was in the Marines, and had read it, and want to have that discussion with you. So thank you all who become members, who donate. I try to have fun with this show, so we'll make jokes, we'll mock J.D. Vance and so on and so forth, but obviously I would not put in the energy or the time if I didn't take it very seriously. If you don't agree, that's fine. Reasonable minds can disagree on so many things, but if you do, your support is very helpful. This is what I do full time. It really does help, and so many of you have come to help. And there's so many ways to do it. We get our news really from the community. There's a lot of people who've been around for a very long time who just consistently bringing us the stories that we break down and then we go live with. And when I go live, as often as not, I've actually more often than not, I've had loads of discussions with people about what does this really mean, what are the implications going forward. So I'm the one who's saying it, but in time really is people like Commander, people like Titan, people like Dorito, people like Sinister Porpoise, Bregwin, and others who have put this idea that we need to make as many people aware of what we're seeing as quickly as possible, and do it well and put all of this together. So thank you to everybody who's contributed in whatever way they have. Lance, once again, thank you so much for another show. My hope is that we don't need to call on you before a week from today, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. So that'll be the hope. We haven't covered much of Ukraine. There's a number of reasons for that. In part, it's because so much has been going on here. In part, because while there is movement and things are getting worse for Ukraine, it's not at the breakneck pace. So we haven't been staying with it as much as we can. 𝐿 Ludan breaks down every single day. Every day he reads the report from Ukraine and what their progress or failures are for that day, and then he shows you pictures of various things. Sometimes it's of people blowing up Russians, other times it's of the home. So we will be redirecting people there if they want to learn about just one of the people in our orbit. So stick around if you would like to learn a little bit more about him. I think he's coming up to coming up to 1,000, so we will wish him luck with that. Commander, once again, thank you, and we will see you all either at our next breaking or at Tuesday, 9 p.m. for In Time with 𝐒𝐨𝐮𝐭𝐭𝐞𝐫. Have a good day.